Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're always about the positive vibes here on the show, and with me right now I've got a very special guest. He has worked for World Championship Wrestling, WCW, and TNA Wrestling, Total Nonstop Action as the ring announcer. And he's got a brand new book out, sitting ringside, going to talk all about it with us here. Pleased to welcome the one, the only, David Penzer. Welcome, David, to Wrestling with Heart.
Hey, Stanley. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So you're from New York, the Bronx, doing some research on you and your career. Talk to me about your childhood.
My child, I was born in the Bronx. We lived there for 6 years. Well, we moved from the city to upstate New York when I was like 4, and then we moved down to Florida when I was 6. So, there's not a lot I remember of New York. I remember my grandmother taking me around and my little carriage or she would be like, "Hello, Mr. Policeman. This is David." "Hello, David," the policeman would say. It'd say, "David, could you wave to the policeman?" And I would. And she would say, "Hello, Mr. Garbage Man." And that's about all I remember.
All right. Okay.
Funny how that sticks out.
Yeah. And seems like a fun time, New York, moving to Florida, that's the South. So kind of a far cry. Okay. Was wrestling something you grew up watching as a kid?
No, as I talk about it in the first book, and there's 2 volumes, though. Volume 1 has been out for a while. Volume 2 just came out recently. But as I talk about in Volume 1, no, I was introduced to it by a cousin of mine when I was 11 years old, and I was hooked. I was as hooked when I was 11 years old as I'm almost 59, so figure out how many years later, 48 years later, uh, when I watched John Cena turn heel the other night. And, I don't watch every match. You can't. There's not enough time in the day to watch every match or even every show. I try to fast forward through some things, but yeah, put me in that zone of, pro wrestling done right with angles and promos and stuff like that. And I'm that same little 11-year-old that watched Superstar Billy Graham and Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, go at it with Gordon Solie calling the action. So,
Yeah. Florida was a huge territory.
yeah, I was very lucky to grow up in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I became a huge fan and, just tried to figure out a way to, not even to get into business. That wasn't even a thought at some point, just to maybe get to know somebody or kind of find an in. Yeah, as the Volume 1 talks about is I worked very hard, but I got very, very lucky. People saw some things, couple of people saw some things in me that weren't there. And you got to remember, this is in the 1980s and 90s, late 80s, early 90s. So totally different business. You don't walk into a dressing room in World Championship Wrestling or anywhere, quite frankly, even on the indie circuit, unless you are a wrestler or a referee. You just don't. And I was neither of those. I wasn't even a ring announcer when I started bringing guys to WCW. I just found a bunch of things that I could do to help out, run guys for promos for Jim Ross and, just whatever I could do to help out, ring the bell. Eventually, not only did I get my opportunity, knock on wood, but I got the respect of these guys that must have looked at me for a couple of months going, who the hell is he and why is he here? I walked around. One of the first things I started doing was I walked around and had people sign in. It was a pay sheet, so you had to print your real name and sign it. It was also the legal letter saying that in a paragraph that you was like tiny print saying that if by signing this we could use your image and your video in perpetuity, and so that's why a lot of the guys when WWE Network first started and 24/7 and all that, and they were like, "Well, you owe us royalties." I was like, "You didn't read that fine print. You just wanted to get paid." They're like, "You're right." I said, "That fine print said they own you. They don't owe you. They owe you what they're paying you today, and they don't owe you anything moving forward." Uh, and but since people wanted to get paid, they took my, yeah, I tried really hard not to be a mark, even though inside I was at the time. And well, I'm always a mark, but uh, so I tried really hard. So I just, hello, sir. This is the pay sheet. Can I get you to sign it so I get you paid? And they probably, there's probably a couple of people looked at me like, who the hell are you? But they heard paid and they didn't really care. But eventually they got to respect me. Well, John, remember a couple of months in, Junkyard Dog and Tommy Rich, we're in Gainesville, Georgia, the Georgia Mountain Center. And they stopped me, and Junkyard Dog said, "What do you do? What do you do here? Who are you here with?" And I told him, bring guys up from Florida to do, enhancement work, and I'm just helping out while I'm here. And Jody Hamilton is the one who invited me. Once you say Jody Hamilton, I mean, the guy had mad respect, so nobody's gonna, kick you out on your ass. They might just give you a dirty look. But Junkyard Dog said, "All right, well that makes sense." He goes, "I'm gonna call you the Walking Man. You walk here, you walk there, you walk around, never stop walking." And to this day, if I see like a Tommy Rich, who I haven't seen in like 25 years, or when I used to see Tracy Smothers before he passed, they would call me the Walking Man. "Hey, Walking Man, what's going on?"
It's like a brotherhood, sisterhood. The friends that you make in
It
this
wasn't back
business.
then, man. They looked at me. Not back then though. But back then I didn't belong there, and it's true I didn't belong there. I don't know why they put up with it. I guess they put up with it because Jody saw something in me, like I said, that wasn't there. Um, and and because of that, that there's no doubt in my mind. There's been a few people in my career, probably half a dozen or so, that I couldn't have gone to the next level without. But there's not a doubt in my mind without Jody seeing something in me that I don't know that anybody else saw. That would never have happened. That would have been a one and done WC. It was a favor to Bob Roop, who was my first mentor, and if he didn't see something in me that nobody else saw, that would have been a one and done. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. And you know what? That still would have been cool because I still would have been backstage with the guys in WCW, the Rock and Roll Express, and the Four Horsemen, and all those guys. And so, you know what? If that's the only, I could have said that was pretty cool. But luckily, a combination of my hard work and some breaks that I had got, I got to move to the next level. So ever
Yeah,
since
they
then, it's been a dream come true.
they moved you up the ladder. You started, in the office, and then eventually you worked your way up. How did the announcing gig come about?
So Jim Ross was there for a while, and like I said, he was in charge of he was like the executive producer of the Saturday Night Show. So he just he made it was before Eric got the gig, and so he made sure who the ring announcers were, there, all that stuff, just like overseeing the whole thing. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so I would run guys for promos, for him, uh, and you know, run errands for him if he needed. So if anybody needs something, I'm Stooge of the Year. We thought about naming the book Stooge of the Year. But so anyway, I had my foot in the door. I was going to do whatever it took, short of something that my values didn't believe in. But so I would tell him, yeah, I'm a ring announcer, I'm a mobile DJ, ring announcer. I ring announce in South Florida. If you ever have an opening, I'd love an opportunity. That's all I ask. So Tony Schiavone came back from WWF, and right at the same time, Jim Ross walked away for the first time from WCW. So, like his second week there, Tony Schiavone said, "Hey, are you the guy that drives people down from Florida? And I was like, yeah. He was like, well, we have an opening for a ring announcer. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. He said, yeah, there's this guy, Dino Puglia, that used to ring announce in WWF. He lives in Tampa. Will you bring him up next week? And I mean, it really could have ended all there because I didn't know what to say. But I was like, Penzer, you got to say something. So I was like, well, I know that you just came back, and I've been talking to JR, and I'm a ring announcer as well, and if I'd love the opportunity to compete for the job. He said, okay, well, bring up Dino next week, and then the next week after that you could get a tryout. And really, I mean, I've never been so nervous in my life. I wrote down every single word I was going to say throughout the whole show, like even like ladies and gentlemen. And I like to say I won by default. I think that neither of us were great at first, and uh, Dino made a few mistakes. I had the knowledge of being on the headsets, ringing the bell, knowing what they expected from a ring announcer in between matches, and to get the crowd going and all that stuff, and how the cues were done. And I mean, I truly believe that I won by default because I was already coming up anyway, so they didn't have to pay my travel. But that was the start of just taking on as many things as I could, and just inhaling myself with learning everything. And, inhaling is probably not the word. Embracing myself to learn everything about the pro wrestling business.
Yeah, I mean, you'd mentioned you had come from a broadcasting background, had done some stuff as a mobile DJ. Uh, Talk to me about that experience and how that kind of prepared you for the world of pro wrestling as an announcer.
Yeah, I was always comfortable talking on the mic. I used to do the morning in second or third grade. I used to do the morning announcements at Tropical Elementary. Uh, the what do you call it? We put that they never do anymore. Uh, Pledge of Allegiance. I used to lead that, and then I used to read some school messages. Don't forget that we have a bake sale on Tuesday. Tell your parents to send stuff, and just never bothered me. And I was a big record collector, and I was like, at some point, I just bought me and my best friend bought some DJ equipment and started a DJ business. And we started just doing like little gigs, like at people's houses and stuff. And eventually, they were doing weddings and sweet 16s. And one of the more requested DJs companies in the South Florida area, Fort Lauderdale, and then my senior year in high school, there was a radio station at a high school down the road from the high school I was at, and so I was able to do the 9 to 12 shift as a regular DJ, and then go for my 2 classes because I only had 2 classes I had to take as a senior. So go take those 2 classes, and so yeah, just always comfortable talking on a microphone.
That's so fascinating. Now, you got the gig working for WCW as a ring announcer. Any pieces of advice that you got from Jim Ross or any other people in the company at the time that helped, make you feel comfortable and things that still stick with you today?
Yeah, Gary Capetta would give me lots of great advice. I studied him obviously because like I said, I did a lot of the bell ringing around that time. And so if you're ringing the bell, you're out by the hard camera. You are only for house shows where the person that rang the bell sit at ringside. It was a whole different setup. At house shows, we had a table at ringside with the bell, and the ring announcer sat there. But at the TV tapings, the ring announcer sat up by the hard cameras, and he had a headset. I had a headset, and so Keith Mitchell, the executive producer at the time, would tell me, ring the bell, and I could hear the chatter going on, like I said, and what they were telling Gary and what Gary was saying. It was an education of a lifetime. You couldn't have paid for an education like that at the time, because really Gary was the only one that was doing that kind of, entertaining the crowd. The WWF guys, even Howard Finkel is as much of a legend as he is, and will always be. It's the king of the mountain, the greatest of all time. He didn't talk in between matches. They didn't do that. So I got to, really sit under a learning tree of something that really didn't exist until the torch was passed to me from Gary. And so I just ran with what I was watching, and I just tried to do as best I can. And eventually, I got over being petrified and settled in, and like I said, got some great opportunities and got to live my dream.
Yeah, you were there from 93 to 2001. I mean, that was
Really,
the
92. I really started in 92, but back then I was just stooging around, driving guys, enhancement guys up from Florida. So
yeah, I mean,
93 is when 93 is when I got the backup ring announcer gig.
yeah, I mean, you got to be around for some of the most legendary times in the industry. The
Yeah.
Monday Night Wars, the NWO, and Goldberg and DDP, and all these different characters, different guys that would come through that promotion. I mean, talk to me about some of the fun interactions you got to have during your time in WCW.
I mean, I remember so many, and I remember the NWO being formed, and Hogan coming out as the third man, and I spent the next 3 years dodging garbage at ringside, and I remember Ric Flair coming out to join the Four Horsemen in Greenville. I'll never forget, man. I think it was after a Halloween Havoc when, unbeknownst to only maybe a handful of people in the entire building, including the crew and the wrestlers. All of a sudden, Roddy Piper's music started to play, and Piper came out and confronted Hogan. And I was a huge, 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 huge Roddy Piper fan. I'm a Terry Funk, Roddy Piper guy, and uh, and I actually got the opportunity to share a van with them from the gathering of the Juggalos back to the hotel. Just me and Terry and Roddy and a bottle of vodka. And I missed my plane, but it was a great time. And I told my wife, I said, I'm not even sorry I missed my plane. I just had an hour and a half drive and drink and drive session with my two favorite all time wrestlers and two of the greatest ever. So, uh, but but yeah. So when Piper came out like that with his music and the whole outfit and all that, I popped. I still watch it sometimes and get goosebumps.
Yeah, I mean Roddy Piper's a true legend, as is Terry Funk. Both guys are still to this day sorely missed by so many
Yeah.
people.
And I got to write. I got to work for Roddy. I spent 45 days in Billy Ray Cyrus's tour bus, crisscrossing
Mm.
the country as his tour manager tour. There's at least a chapter or two in Volume One on that, and yeah, very interesting.
That had to have been
Uh,
amazing.
yeah, incredible, incredible. He worked us hard, but he paid us well. So
Yeah, can't go wrong with that. Um, Now WCW closed in 2001. What was the reaction like backstage? And were you looking at possibly going to WWE before you joined TNA?
no, I mean back then there was Howard Finkel and Lillian Garcia. Really, that was there wasn't even wouldn't have even been a thought of bringing anybody else in. That was their crew. It's funny, Lillian is still doing it. They brought her back,
Mhm.
um, but uh, but yeah. So it man, it was it was an appreciation for the ride I got to live, and a lot of confusion as to where I was going to move on from there. Not only in wrestling business but in life, and that's what Volume Two talks a lot about the way I kept myself, even if it was gig to gig and paycheck to paycheck, and how I kept myself alive in the business before the TNA opportunity came out, to be able to remain a player. And a lot of that I give direct gratitude and appreciation to Jimmy Hart, who included me in everything he did. Not only as a ring announcer, but as if Jimmy Hart was doing a project, we were working on it together. It was 50-50 collaboration. That's how much trust Jimmy Hart had in me. And I think about 6 months ago, I called him and I told him the book was coming out. And I thanked him. And he said, "Well, that just makes me smart." I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "Well, because you're smart. You're great at what you do. You're a hell of a ring announcer, if not the best. So if I'm working with you, having you on all my projects, and that makes me smarter because I have you. And I was like, wow, coming from me hard. That's like quite the compliment. But man, yeah, we had some good times together going up and down the roads, Memphis and Atlanta and just different places. And like I said, anything that Jimmy was involved with is David Penzer was involved with. And without, I say there's a lot of people in my career that, help, take me to the next journey. If Jody got me to WCW, Jimmy got me to the XWF, and then through that craziness afterwards until Jeff Jarrett got me to TNA.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to have people in your corner, root for you, help you out, and TNA at this particular time really was on fire. Like they were doing some real next level stuff. You had Christian Cage, there. You had Kurt Angle. You had AJ Styles and Samoa Joe. All these guys, bringing things to a whole new gear. Talk to me about, you'd mentioned Jarrett signing you. Talk to me about your time in TNA.
Well, that was actually, I had a very successful company. I was a business partner, and it was the Airbrush Tattoo Company. We were in over 100 theme parks, zoos, and aquariums in North America, and we're on almost 50 cruise ships at one point. Um, it was successful until it crashed in '08. But so I didn't. It was an interesting dichotomy because I was taking JB's place, who was taking uh, uh, temporarily taking Shane Douglas's place. Shane Douglas was doing the backstage interviews, the Mean Gene stuff, and so Jeff told me, this is just for 1 or 2 weeks until once Shane comes back, JB's our guy, and I know that he for the when they first started and they had the money situation, I know he worked many weeks, if not months, for free, so he deserved to have that loyalty, and so lucky for me, JB was incredible doing the backstage interviews. So there's no, if they had me doing the ring announcing, familiar voice, knew how to, again, working with Keith Mitchell, the same executive producer, knows how, nobody has to micromanage me. I know what I'm doing. Now, I don't say that cocky. I just say that is because I did by that point. And so then they could have JB, who was kicking ass on backstage interviews. It just, so from what started as like 1 or 2 gigs, became 4 or 5 years, and then a couple trips back. But it was interesting because it was the first time in my career that I didn't need the wrestling business to make a living. It was a nice extra money and nice fun times drinking every night after the shows with Don West, rest his peace, and Mike Tenay, and whoever else would join us at the bar there at the DoubleTree. But I was having a ball doing that, and I was making nice extra money, and Jeff would allow me to work from Universal during the day so I could run my company, and it was good times. It was good times.
Yeah, I mean,
Every other week we tape Monday and Tuesday. I
okay.
believe so. 4 shows every other week, and don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And so yeah, and it's interesting because, and I talk about this in volume 2. It's the first time in my life that wrestling was not something that I needed. It was something that I wanted. Not that I didn't want it before, but WCW was all about how long could I keep this going, make a living for my family. I had 2 young kids. Then the XWF came, and I actually got my first XWF paycheck when I got my last severance check from WCW. I couldn't even do 1 week with combined. But I'm not complaining about that. And then, it's like, okay, how do you and Jimmy Hart and string, together some stuff. And then Jeff hired me to do the World Wrestling All-Stars. And I had my own in your face booking company, booking guys like Snuka and King Kong Bundy and stuff, and getting a percentage of that. So it's just stringing along. And then, at some point I had to realize that, I had to find something else to do, at least for a living. So we started this company. It was very successful. So it wasn't like I went back to TNA and said, I need this to work. Like, Jeff Jarrett needed it to work. You know what I mean? AJ Styles needed it to work. I wasn't emotionally invested in it. I had a blast. I gave it my all. I know no other way than to give it my all. But it wasn't an emotional investment at that point. It was just, how long could I keep, keep coming to Orlando, doing my deal, and then go out and drink at the DoubleTree with Mike and Don every night. And when I was let go the first time, the only thing that sucked about it is I had just bought my wife a new car. But it did, the extra money was nice, but it didn't affect, I didn't have to worry about, okay, where's my next paycheck coming from? It's, okay, maybe I could find another way in the wrestling business now that I'm back in, in the wrestling world, so to speak, to find some extra money. But and it's not, no, don't get me wrong, it's not all about money. It's just, but you can't do it unless you could pay your bills.
Right.
You can't, it wasn't about the money. It was about how I could survive and still be a part of the business that I loved and was honored to be a part of. That was, unforeseen in so many levels. And so unfortunately, when you have a wife and two young kids, you have to find a way to pay the bills.
Exactly.
Or else the wife tells you, hey, no wrestling, no more wrestling, go do something, because we have bills to pay. So that was sort of always the kind of crazy walk that I had to walk. And but it's been a blast. I've finished up with Impact Wrestling before they became TNA again, about a year and 3 months ago, about 15 months ago. I knew that for a while that I was going to be passing the torch to Jade Alexander, Jen Alexander, Jade Chung, who's no longer there. I don't know what that. I'm assuming that has to do with Josh maybe going somewhere else. Um, but Scott D'Amore gave me a great send off, man. I tell you, it's just couldn't have hoped for anything more. If I never do anything else in this business, if that's the I see it. If that was the end, that was the perfect ending. I'll always be ingratiated Scott D'Amore, who I had known for 30 years. I started booking him as an enhancement in WCW. So the tables kind of turned a little bit. At first, he worked under me, and then I worked under him, and that's cool. Scott's a
Yeah.
smart guy, very successful. And hey, I was just a ring announcer, he gave me a great send off, and like I said, I'm never saying that I'm never going to do anything in this business. I'm going to be 59 years old. I'm a guy, which right in this business right now as a ring announcer is not exactly, the demographic that a lot of people are looking for. But you know what? If somebody offers me something, I said never about 3 times, and then they keep pulling you back in. So I'm never going to say never, but I can't see the travel at the end was brutal. I can't see a scenario where I would sign on to do like a bi-weekly or a weekly gig or anything like that. I'd love to, if anybody wants to, you know, bring me in for a WrestleFest, let me do some book signings, Q&As, whatever. I'd be interested in listening to that, but just the travel got really brutal.
It's tough. It is because you're constantly on the road, and you have to really train your body, condition your body. Like this is a schedule. You have to commit to the grind. So I understand. And but you talk about Scott D'Amore. I mean, that's a full circle moment right there with you
Yeah,
getting
it
that
really
send off.
was. And he found somebody in the crowd who had an old WCW hat with the old logo, and he put it on, and he, talked about how, I got him into business, and booked him up there to wrestle the Harlem Heats and the Vaders and uh, the list of people, the Stings and the Lugers, and yeah, no, we stayed friends over the years. We stayed in touch, and he's always done right by me. I didn't think for a minute I was ever going to go back. Especially with COVID. Who's calling ring announcer during COVID. It didn't even dawn on me that they were going to try to tape shows with no audience in them.
It's crazy.
Which was which is one of the more interesting parts of my story. Uh, but so yeah, so got a call out of nowhere, and he said, "You want to come up?" And I was like, "I don't think my wife's going to like that." And I thought about it, and I said, I told my wife, I said, "You got to get busy," because this is at the very beginning of COVID. Nobody
Mhm.
knew if anybody was going to live, if everybody was going to die from it. I mean, the first few weeks to a month, nobody really knew. They were telling you 42 things. Wash your groceries before you take them inside. No, you don't have to do that. That's not how wear a mask. Well, you don't have to wear a mask outside if you're not with a group of people. I still see people wearing a mask outside riding a bike, and that's okay. But if it makes them feel better, I wish that whatever. I'm not going to get off on a tangent on that. It doesn't anger me. It's their life. But my point is that this was at a time where nobody really knew. You go back now and say, oh yeah, this happened, and we were wrong about that. We were right about that, and they got this one wrong, but then they fixed it. Um, at the very beginning, nobody knew. So literally, I sat on my couch and drank vodka every day and night. So it really, in a lot of ways, I talk a lot about my struggles with mental health in both books, and as a 45-year survivor of anxiety and panic attacks to this day. Uh, I had a anxiety attack today, so I've learned how
Wow.
to deal with it internally a little bit, but and I'm very open about talking about it, helping other people, but yeah, but he might. I mean, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but Scott might have saved my life by that phone call because I was in a bad place. There was nothing to do. There was nothing to watch on TV. Everything halted production, and there's no sports. No football, no baseball, no anything. And to have an opportunity every week and a half or 2 weeks to go up to Nashville and get away from it all and be part of something that I love and be part of something that energizes me. I mean, might have saved my life. Not to sound over extreme, but I was walking down a bad path uh, at a time where there wasn't a lot of ways out, and I was lucky enough to get a way out.
Yeah, COVID was definitely a tough period. It was a hard period because, like you said, so many things were closing down and there wasn't a lot of entertainment. Um,
It was
and
nothing.
it was just there's a lot of uncertainty in
I
the world.
remember I can remember. I can remember about 2 weeks after everything shut down. I'm on my couch drinking vodka, trying to find something to watch that I hadn't seen before. Because they had reruns and stuff. And
Mhm.
I'll never forget. There was two guys. Well, there was two guys. They were calling Japanese baseball from their because Japan was still playing baseball. They were just playing in empty stadiums, and they were calling Japanese baseball from their individual offices. So, like one guy be sitting in L.A. at his home office, the other guy be sitting in New York City, wherever I don't know from, and they would have them do the voiceovers of Japanese baseball. And they actually did a really good job with it. As a baseball fan, I found it really interesting because there are a lot of American players. Whenever an American player would come up or be involved in the game, they would tell their story, how why who they played for in the U.S., why it didn't work out, how it's going in Japan, a lot just and that's pretty much vodka and Japanese baseball. Pretty much got me through the first few weeks, and then luckily Scott called and bailed me
Yeah.
out of that madness.
Yeah, I mean, wrestling is an escape. When things are just going wrong in your life, everybody needs that thing to just get them out of it for 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever. And so for a lot of people, like wrestling is the thing, and there's just nothing like being able to say to be entertained for a couple of hours, to get away from all
Yeah,
the craziness.
I mean,
Um,
look at Elimination Chamber. We've got all
mhm.
kinds of crazy political stuff going on. Half the country hates the other half of the country over politics, which is silly. But that's just my opinion. I'm not a political guy, but hate is a strong word. Um, and so for a couple hours, a few hours, I sat back on Peacock on Saturday night, had a couple drinks, and oh, who's going to win the men's elimination chamber? Okay, CM Punk's the limit, blah blah blah, and watch that go down, and then to see okay, Sting won, Sting won, Cena won, and he comes down to the ring, him and Cody embrace, and then and The Rock comes down. The Rock gives the stipulation to Cody. Cody says, "Go f yourself." And then you see that look on Cena's face as he's embracing Cody, and you're realizing that holy shit, it's finally going to happen. I mean, that's you don't have to think about anything else. You don't have to think about the bills that you owe, or the job that you have to get, or the car that doesn't work, or the crazy political environment we're in, or anything like that. You could just sit back and roll with it, man. And it's just something that I love surprises. One of the things that I hate about the internet is that they spoil surprises. I try not to read them. I'm so glad that a lot of that stuff doesn't get out over there. I know a lot of TNA stuff. One of the really cool things about that when TNA did the empty arena stuff in Nashville, we never had one spoiler. So it was a very small production crew and a very, kind of small, limited talent crew. And, a couple of producers, D'Lo Brown and then, Tommy Dreamer and Scott and Gail, but not once did anything ever leak. So, I thought that was something that you could really be proud of because, we were bringing in some pretty heavy names at the time, the Good Brothers and Kenny Omega did that, deal where he was our world champion for a while. And, I didn't even know about that. And I was in all the production meetings. I watched that on AEW when he won the title and walked out with it. And I was like, well, son of a bitch. I didn't see that coming. Wonder where it goes from here.
That unpredictability.
Yeah, but I love it. So yeah, to be able to sit back for a couple hours and just get lost in the story and what's going to happen is really really a great way to not have to think about the stress and the craziness that is our people's lives.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody has something. Everybody has something going on. So
yes, absolutely. Well, let's talk about your new book, Sitting Ringside. You've got 2 volumes. You just released the second one. What made you decide to write this collection of stories?
Well, I wrote it with Guy Evans, who did the Nitro book. I never had any intention of writing a book. I mean, not even a second thought. People had said to me, Bill Apter had said, "Oh, you should write a book." No, Bill, I have no interest in writing a book. But what happened was I was cleaning out my office and I found all these old. For some reason, I kept a lot of stuff that thank God I did. I found these old formats and old, from the mid '90s and the last Nitro format and the format of Thunder where David Arquette won the world title and XWF business plans and Flair's last match format, which I had recently done. And so I took a couple of pictures of some of the stuff and put them on like teases and put them on Twitter. And I'm like, anybody know what to do with this? I was trying to find a way to monetize it. And Guy Evans wrote me back immediately on Twitter. He DM'd me and he said, "Let's talk tomorrow. Don't put any more of those up." And so it was started out, it was going to be like a scrapbook, the rare, all the rare treasure trove of never before seen. So much of that is, people, they call it inside baseball, but it could be used for anything else, inside politics, inside the NFL, people love to know how the sausage is made. And that was, that a lot of people aren't privy to some of these formats and some of these internal memos and how things roll out, and so it gave an opportunity to see how the sausage was made. So as far as I knew, we were just going to do a scrapbook with that stuff and me telling a few stories. And so about 3 weeks in of me talking to Guy, he says, "I want to do a book." I said, "What do you mean you want to do a book?" He goes, "I want to tell your story." I said, "Nobody wants to hear my story." He said, no, I'm telling you, people want to hear your story. And knock on wood, he was right. It's done very well. And then we decided to do two volumes. And so so yeah, so one ends as the waves crash. One begins at, when I first talked in front of a microphone, and ends when the wave crashed in Panama Beach, Florida, and swept away WCW. And then the rest is, trying to keep my foot in the business, and then other things I did in my career, like the tour with Piper and stuff like that. So it's gotten tons of great reviews. It's gotten all 5-star. Both books have gotten all 5-star ratings. I mean, nobody's perfect, and I don't expect perfection, but I haven't gotten even like a 4.9-star rating. So I'm very proud of that. I couldn't have done it without Guy Evans. Guy is the most talented professional wrestling writer on the planet right now, and taking away nothing from the other ones that are all very successful and do a great job. But I got really lucky. I got lucky in a lot of ways. I got lucky, getting in the business. But then to put a bow on it, to be able to have Guy write my story and possibly my ending, probably. Is just like the coup de grace of being lucky.
You've got a chock full of great stories to tell because you've witnessed so much history occur through multiple companies, and the fact that you're able to have it down on print and online is remarkable.
I'm not going to lie, it's a fun read. I remain doubtful, but when Guy finally got me the first book, and we did it chapter by chapter, and I found myself now. Keep in mind, this is my story, and I felt myself, because he would send me a chapter a night to review. So I would be like, I can't wait to get chapter 4. I can't wait to get and then I got chapter 4. Oh my God, I can't wait to get chapter 5. And it was like I'm marking out for my own story. That's how good a writer he is, and how good he puts things and turns my awkward, clunky stories into entertainment. And so, like I said, grateful that I got that opportunity to work with him. And yeah, you could go to Amazon.com to get the books. We like I said, we got a ton of bonus material, hundreds of pages of bonus material in both books. If you like I said, if you like to see how the sausage is made back in the good old days, this would be, I guarantee you will not be able to put it down. And plus, you get to hear my story, which Guy does a pretty good job of. You can also go to David Penzer Book, BOOK.com, and there's some bundles in there. We get a couple extra things and some of those formats. Instead of just reading in the book, you get them. So maybe you could get them signed by wrestlers as a collector's item. So yeah, you can go to Amazon.com or DavidPenzerBook.com. Sitting Ringside, Volume 1 and 2. I'm very proud of it, and like I said, we haven't had a negative review.
That's
So
amazing. So,
yeah, I guess Josh Matthews didn't read the books.
well, let's switch gears and talk about some of the stuff you've done outside of wrestling. I know you've been involved with a lot of charity organizations or have done a lot of charity work over the years. What kinds of things have you done to help out in your community?
Well, I mean, it started off bringing wrestling involved when I worked for the Global Wrestling Alliance, which was a small little upstart group with TV here down in South Florida. My dad is a psychologist. He was the director of the Broward County Psychological Association, and so we did a wrestling show uh, where all monies went to that organization. So, I mean, from the very beginning of being able to get my foot in the door, and this is early, this is 6, 8 months in to, getting my foot in the door in anywhere. And, I could always count, he had some charities that he really felt strongly about. And, I would always do things to help him out, use whatever notoriety or, semi notoriety I had. I'm very proud of the fact that, I love to talk to people about their mental health struggles. I'm very open about mine. I'm an open book. And we talk about them all throughout both books. I'm very, very honest about it. And I was involved in my community for 25 years. I just recently moved, but I was the chairman of the board there, and really helped do some nice things for my community, which I loved. And like I said, after 25 years we moved, but it was an honor to be able to be involved. And it's a lot of work when you decide you want to like run a board. It's not like, you have to go to a meeting for 2 hours. You're the go-to guy if you're the chairperson, which I was. You're the go-to guy when anything goes wrong. It's funny. The community is on a golf course, and there's a there's a Facebook page for the community, and I saw today that there's videos somebody accidentally running their golf cart into one of the ponds, and so I texted the golf pro who became very good friends with. Hell, I hired him 20 something years ago, and he and I said, "Hey, sorry, I'm in touch. Out of time. Kind of just doing my own thing here. Anything going on in your neck of the woods?" And he sent me a picture of the golf cart in the lake, in the pond. And I said, "Yeah, I saw the video. I'm just busting your chops." And I said, "Do you have to get in the water to go see it? And if so, do you get to wear a bathing suit?" And we went back and forth. But it's fun not to be the guy they call when that happens anymore, because that can be taxing.
Yeah, I mean,
So that's just some of the things that's some of the things I've done. Anytime anybody's ever called me and said, "Hey, we feel like you could be important to any venture that we're raising money for this, that, or the other," because some people know who you are, and some people even care who you are. I've never said no. I'm a karma guy. My whole life I've lived like that. You get out of this world what you put into this world, and you put it in honestly and hard work and dedication and no BS. So I'm a karma guy. So it's how I run my real estate brokerage here. And well, I'm not the broker, but my real estate business here in the Tampa, Florida area. It's how I ran my entire time in the wrestling business, my airbrush tattoo company, my life, my relationships. So if I could help anybody in any way, I'm happy to do it, because I feel like what comes around goes around. And not that I'm doing it because I expect anything. Just the whole thing about karma is you just do the right thing, and hey, I'm a perfect example. You do the right thing and you walk the right path, and you do it honestly and with good intentions, and things come around and work out in your favor. So yeah, you'll never get me to not do that. Sometimes I'll see a real estate agent kind of like lying to clients, or I'll lose a client to a real estate agent because they weren't honest with them. And I remember I once looked at my wife and said, "I think I'm too honest for this business." I said, because there's all these people are lying and bullshitting, and I can't do that. I couldn't do it. It's just not what I'm made of. Not to build myself up or anything, but just a great example of how to live your life. If you want good things to happen. So that's been my mantra. Knock on wood, so far so good. And I urge you to check out the books. You can follow me on Twitter at David Penzer. We don't talk politics, mostly wrestling, a little fantasy football during the season. And that's about that. So just a little insight from me here and there. And when I see things that I remember being a part of, like I remember when somebody had shown that it was like 25 years ago today that the Honky Tonk Man walked out of Starcade, and because he didn't want to do a job to Johnny B. Bad, and or it might have been Duggan, one of those two. And so I said, insight into this story. I was there. I was sitting right next to Honky Tonk when he came back and packed his bags. And Honky Tonk was making $1,000 a show, and he had 25 days booked. This is when we were at full bore. He had 20, and Polk made sure he got on every show. So he's walked away from at least a few months of $25,000 a month. That's still a lot of money. To be able to say you made $75,000 in 3 months, that's still a ton of money. So I still never couldn't believe he walked away from it, but he said he wasn't going to put anybody over. on pay-per-views or TV without a contract. They hadn't gotten that, so he walked away. I don't know if Honky regrets it, or I don't. Knowing Honky, I don't think he does. But nobody could believe it. He just packed his bags and walked out and said, "I'm gone."
Wow.
So I'd throw stuff like that. On Twitter. If I see something, this day and 25 years ago in WCW, just throw it up there and give my remembrances of like, for example, the DX invasion in Norfolk.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that was happening. I didn't know that happened until the show was over and they aired it on their television. There were some that knew it was happening. I think Kevin Nash said he knew. Obviously Doug Dillinger, the head of security, knew. Eric knew, but it wasn't like a big deal. It wasn't like nobody saw them out there unless you were looking for it. We were just all doing eating lunch and getting ready for the show to start, and production meetings and that kind of stuff. And it wasn't like you turn on the internet and all of a sudden there's a picture of DX out front of your building. It didn't exist back then.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, that was like the height of the Monday Night Wars. I mean, talking about WWE, WCW going head to head, and you had to really like fight real hard to get on top of the ratings.
To this day, I don't know why they didn't let him in. I've heard several stories, and I don't know what the correct story is. At the end of the day, it's none of my business. But yeah, they should have let him in. What's the worst that could have happened? We had Barbarian and Haku in our locker room. So worst that was going to happen was going to be they were going to get some content. We were going to get some content and probably hang out and meet for beers later or something, because a lot of the guys were intertwined.
Yeah.
I think they should have let him in. Maybe in hindsight, Eric. I never asked Eric this, but next time I talk to him or text him, I'm going to ask him. But I don't know if in hindsight he wishes he let him in. But like I said, we had Ming and Haku, and you could bring triple the amount of people from WWE that were on that tank, and all you need is Ming and Haku. And ask anybody in the business that's been around for 25, 30 years, they'll tell you the exact same thing. There's never been one person that's disagreed. Wow. Two of the toughest people in the world and two of the nicest, most kindest people in the world, because they knew what they had and they didn't need to use it unless push came to shove. And, so they were humbled by it. And, but they knew it was there in the back of their head. I know, I could guillotine two guys and kick one guy in the balls and rip one guy's eye out if I have to. But thank God they never had to, but they could.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so many great stories. And you were there.
It's funny. We don't even talk about the degeneration thing in the book. We totally forgot. I totally forgot about it. It just never came up. So, I mean, goes to show you, even though you might buy the book, but follow me on Twitter, because like we didn't talk about the Honky Tonk Man thing in the book. We didn't talk about the DX invasion. There's a lot of great stories. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot, it's gotten tremendous fanfare, and I really appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. But there's a lot of stuff we never got to, and we're not doing a volume 3. So the only way you can follow along is follow me at Twitter at David Penzer.
Well, David, this has been wonderful. Getting the chance to speak with you it means a lot to me and to my listeners and viewers that are watching this on social media. And I just want to say, you're more than welcome to come back.
Yeah, hey, thanks for what you do, man. It's a different take on the old wrestling podcast interview, but then you get into how you could give back and how others have given back, and I think that's important too. And
I appreciate
something that I've not seen a lot of other podcasters, not criticizing them, but take that angle of a business and then trying to turn it into a positive. So kudos to you for coming up with that. Always got to come up with something different, and it's for a good cause. So I'd love to come back on sometime down the road, and really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Take care.
Yes, sir. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.